I don't know if you've heard, but we are doing a live show. Yes, TSS World Cup Live on June the 11th at the El Rey Theatre in Los Angeles on the opening night of the World Cup, the night before the USMNT kick off their World Cup campaign against Paraguay. We're absolutely buzzing for it, and I know we are plugging it a lot at the moment, but that's just because we want as many of you as possible to be in that room at the El Rey Theatre. It looks like an incredible venue. It'll be an incredible night. This will be the first live show that we've done in nearly 4 years since the last World Cup. So if ever there was a time to come along and support us and to sample what I think is a pretty special TSS community, now is the time to do that. The atmosphere will be buzzing with it being the opening night of a home World Cup for the USA. We'll have exclusive merchandise. We'll have some special guests. Ryan might even sing the TSS unofficial World Cup anthem, which he's yet to write. Yeah, he better get on that quickly. Joe might do some push-ups on stage. So as I say, it'll be an incredible night. Please visit tssworldcup.com to buy tickets, and we'll see you there.
Welcome to the Total Soccer Show and our preview of World Cup Group D, the most significant group of all, for it contains Turkey, Paraguay, Australia, and your United States of America men's national team. We're going to give you the lowdown on everything you need to know about these teams and this group, so do stick with us. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, oh hi Taylor Rockwell. What's up with you?
Hello, my friend. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to know that any listener, the U.S. is now their team. Congratulations. Welcome on board. You've joined the Graham Ruthven hype train for the U.S.
Well, for the next 45 or so, Taylor, your team will be Paraguay. That's who you're going to be talking about.
Si.
Indeed. Graham Ruthven here. Hello, Graham. How are you? Or shall we say, Turkey correspondent Graham Ruthven?
That's right. I've got the shirt and everything. I mean, every Turkey shirt for the last 10 years has been the same. So this isn't even the new one, but it's basically the same as the one they're going to wear at this World Cup. Ryan, I am personally looking forward to your Australia preview, just purely for I presume there's numerous Bart versus Australia references in there.
You better flame and believe there are, Graham.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll try to limit the accent.
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask, you're going to do the whole thing in the accent. Please, keep that for the Patreon.
Struth, maybe. We'll see. I'll be doing Australia, as Graham notes. And here to report on the United States of America, Joe Lowry. Hello, Joe. How are you?
I'm great. I think every 4 years, or I suppose twice every 4 years, if we do this for the Women's World Cup, also, we should get Ryan on the Dutch and the Strayans. I feel like those are the accents, Ryan, that you deliver on consistently every single time. It makes me happy. They're some of my favorites.
Thank you very much, Joe. It's very kind of you to say. The format of these World Cup previews, we're going to go through the story of the team heading into the World Cup. We're going to let you know a bit about their nickname and their backgrounds as well. Then we're going to talk about the managers and the tactics and the key players, the players who won't be here, and in true Total Soccer fashion, the VSP, the very specific prediction for every single team. Before we get there, a little bit of housekeeping. You might have noticed if you listen to these here episodes that we are doing it live in California in a matter of days. Let's call it hours until TSS World Cup Live at the El Rey Theatre. Graham, it's coming close. We're going to be treading the boards of Hollywood. Marvellous.
8 days, a week and a day until our live show in Los Angeles. Our special guests will include the Cooligans. I think Alexis may have been at the Arsenal Trophy Parade this week, so he seems to be getting over the Champions League final quite fine. And I'm very excited for him to have a big argument with Taylor about Arteta and his tactics and how much Taylor loves watching Arsenal and had a great time watching him in the Champions League final. That'll be the main event. We'll keep that for the main event of the show. Tom Bogart and Paul Tenorio are also coming along. We'll have them on stage for a chat about the USMNT and the World Cup in general. It'll be a great night. I'm really looking forward to it. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, tssworldcup.com for tickets.
Excellent stuff. You just said the phrase 8 days a week. Are you hinting at another special guest we might be having on the stage?
Paul McCartney.
The Beatles?
Or just someone who doesn't know numbers or how many days are in the week. Could be anyone.
Paul McCartney, I think he's still locked in the Fonda, of course, the sister venue of the El Rey Theatre. So maybe we can just cart him along to our event for the night.
I'm sure he'd like that. I'm sure he'd like that very much. TSS World Cup Live, June 11th in Los Angeles. Come and join us if you'd like to. Link in show notes. Thank you very much. But for now, let's get to the USMNT. Joe, why don't we start off with that relatively familiar team for us? Would you tell us the story of this team heading into the World Cup? And
No
it's
nickname?
Why not?
No, I'll do a nickname. The nickname is USMNT. Nobody else ever says anything other than that for this team. It's either US, United States, or USMNT. Really, a lot of the nicknames that we've tossed out into the world, I'm sure, never get used, but they sound nice, and then we can talk about them in this bit of the podcast, because we've struggled to make up enough length on these types of shows. That's the only name that you need to worry about. The USA Fact, I've been tossing out national anthem facts, and I'm going to continue to do so for all of my previewed nations. The Star Spangled Banner has a 1.5 octave range, which is just diabolical in terms of the musical structure. Very, very difficult to sing unless you're well-trained. Michael Bublé, though, could probably do it. And Graham, of course, knows how good of a singer Michael Bublé is. He believes it to his core. Not an American, but we'll take him as an honorary because he's just that good. Story of the team heading into the World Cup. On the field, this is a U.S. team whose key players are in their prime. They've been to a World Cup already and have one of the most famous coaches on the planet. Can they deliver a deep run? Like, that is the top line summary of the stakes facing the U.S. Of course, there's all the existential questions that I genuinely don't think the team is thinking about in any real way, which is, what could this World Cup mean for soccer in the United States? We had the 1994 World Cup, and the legacy of that World Cup was really at the top of the soccer pyramid, which was MLS coming into existence in 1996. And that has grown to the point where MLS teams have built so many high-quality facilities and have elevated their product that Argentina and England and all these big nations are going to be using their facilities because they are genuinely world-class. So that has been the legacy of 94, which is top division soccer and I suppose the professionalization of the sport in the United States. The legacy of this tournament for soccer in the U.S. is maybe a little less clear, or at least a little less flashy, which I think when you talk to folks, the real work that U.S. soccer is doing right now is trying to increase participation at the bottom of the pyramid, right? Getting more and more kids involved in the game, improving access to quality coaches, all of those sorts of things. I don't think truly this group of 26 players and the coaching staff and the support staff are thinking about those things at all. I think they're here to do a job, and I think that's exactly how it should be. But there are big questions around what this World Cup will mean for soccer in the U.S., and then, of course, how the U.S. will fare at this World Cup. They missed 2018. There's sort of that lost generation in there. Then it was a young group in 2022. 13 of those 26 players are back for this cycle. Greg Berhalter had the chance to continue coaching after the chaos that followed the 2022 World Cup. He ended up getting canned after a disappointing Copa America run from this team. Shout out Tim Weah. Tim Weah wanted Greg Berhalter back. Then he hit a dude in the head, and then he got Greg Berhalter fired. That's how it goes. Who needs friends when you've got enemies like that? That's not the expression. We're going to move on. Still, Mauricio Pochettino ends up getting hired in 2024. He becomes the coach of this team. There's been a really long cultural reset that has not included a whole lot of the best players playing together. But I mean, over the weekend against Senegal, they looked pretty good, this U.S. team, even though it wasn't the lineup that I think will be the U.S.'s World Cup lineup on opening day for them against Paraguay. But this is a team that seems to be, at least for the moment, rowing in the right direction. We'll see how far that actually takes them this summer.
There we go. The story of the team right up to the Continental Classico presented by Allstate.
Undefeated in the Allstate Continental Tire Classico,
Incredible.
El Clasico.
Bring on more continents, I say, Joe.
We'll take them all.
Very good.
I've got two in today's preview.
Oh, you do. You're straddling. Congratulations, Graham. Anyway,
Close your legs, Graham. Stop straddling.
That's the story of the USA. Allow me, here it comes, to tell you all about the flaming, knifey, spoony, toilet flushing backwards Prime Minister drinking outside in a tube in a pool, child booting Australian national team. Whew, got it all out in one sentence. There you go. This is the 7th World Cup for Team Australia. Soccer isn't the biggest sport in Oz, of course. They've got Aussie rules football, which is insane. If you've never watched that, go watch that. It's insane. They've also got cricket and rugby, but soccer very much growing in Oz. The growth of the game helped a lot by 2022 and the World Cup 3.5 years ago, in which Australia got 2 group stage wins. Then they were out in the round of 16 to eventual winners Argentina. So that was a big moment for them, as was 2006, when they also went to the round of 16 and were knocked out by the eventual winners, also in Italy. That team, their golden generation, more on them a bit later. So they've been stopped at the round of 16 by eventual winners in those 2 instances. Maybe they can go ahead and do that again. Here we shall see. The Australian national team are called the Socceroos. It's a portmanteau of soccer and kangaroo. It's very clever. The story of the team heading into this World Cup. Let's see. We saw them lose to the USMNT, of course, at the end of 2025. They've had some good results. They beat Curacao 5-1 in the last window. Everyone's beaten Curacao by big results, Graham. Am I right?
That's right.
Very good, very good. Also played Mexico at the Rose Bowl this past weekend, losing 1-0 to Mexico in the glorious vistas of Pasadena, 78,000 fans, as seen most iconically, of course, at the Oasis Tour of 2025. I don't think it's done anything else, that stadium, but it is a beautiful stadium that they'll play for in California. Also, the Aussies are facing Switzerland this coming weekend as well. This is going to be a different team to one we saw in 2022. New coach, new players. More on that coming later in this preview. Qualification in AFC is long. Australia were in pot 1. They won all 6 of their second round games. They got out and they got through the third round, I should say, with Japan. The highlight of which in that qualifying campaign was a 1-0 win over Japan. Japan are good. So that was very encouraging for Australia. So that's where we're at. Accents and Simpsons references now firmly in the past of this episode. You're very welcome. More on them later, but not before we hear from Taylor Rockwell about Paraguay.
Yes, you hear from me and the people doing lawn care outside. Should be a good time. Yes, I am previewing Paraguay, Los Guaranis, or the Guaranis, which are the indigenous people of the area. La Albiroja, the red and white, also a nickname. And for me, I will call them the Swansons, which for Parks and Rec viewers, remembers, is maybe not fitting because Ron Swanson probably hates soccer, but it's when he starts his own youth group that will be no fun at all, he says while smiling. No nonsense, solid foundation, Paraguay. Couple interesting things about them in terms of their story. Number one, jumping ahead to the roster for a moment, I want to say this is the most non-European team at the World Cup, although New Zealand might have a shout there, maybe some of the AFC teams, but it is a team that is 77% based outside of Europe, only 6 players playing in Europe, and even they are not for the tippy top necessarily of the clubs. Instead, it's a lot of Argentina, it's a lot of Brazil, and it's a lot of United States, or North America, I should say, with MLS pretty prominently featured. The main story has been the coaching carousel that has been in place since they failed to qualify for the 2022 World Cup, and they have not been to the World Cup in a good number of years. So they don't qualify. They sack their manager. They bring in Guillermo Barros-Schelotto. Yes, sir. He is going to rebuild the whole process. He's going to reshape the team. He is sacked in September of 2023 when qualifying starts poorly. They replace him with Daniel Garnero. Not much changes. 5 points from 6 games by mid-2024. They are 7th in CONMEBOL qualifying. He gets the sack after a very bad Copa America. They finished bottom of their group, lost to Brazil, lost to Colombia, and perhaps most damningly, lost to Costa Rica, and it felt like things are very much moving in the wrong direction. So then they bring in Gustavo Alfaro, who I will talk about later on. He takes over post-Copa America, and there is more or less an instant turnaround. No team in South American qualifying picks up more points than Paraguay does in the final 8 rounds of qualifying. They finish 6th, which is good for automatic qualification. No playoffs needed. So this will be their first tournament since 2010, and they are operating on a bit of a high note, having qualified somewhat comfortably with that kind of solid string of results.
Oh, 2010 feels Rocky Santa Cruz era to me. I like the sound of that.
I believe you are correct.
More of that, please. More of that. Thank you very much, Taylor. Graham is wearing a turkey shirt because he's going to talk turkey now. Here we go.
Yeah, the only European team in this group. Although Turkey, as already referenced, straddles, and that's always the word that's used, right? Every time you hear about Turkey being in Asia and in Europe, they always straddle the Bosphorus. And in fact, 97% of Turkey is considered to be in Western Asia. But for soccer purposes, they are a European team as part of UEFA. Some more quick facts about Turkey. The traditional national sport is oil wrestling, which is known as Yagli Yurish, and it dates back to the Ottoman Empire. And they also eat a dessert in Turkey that has chicken in it. It's called tavuk göksu. It's a concoction of boiled chicken, milk and sugar flavoured with cinnamon. Not sure about that, if I'm honest.
Someone is lying to you, Graham.
I read this on the internet, and the internet has never lied to me before, Taylor Rockwell, so I know who I believe. Anyway.
I just ordered one.
Wow. Turkish chicken breast pudding. I'm looking at a recipe right now. Keep going, Graham.
Yeah, I'm still not convinced. Anyway, this is a soccer-mad nation of around 88 million people with a high-profile league, big clubs like Galatasaray and Fenerbahce, and yet this is Turkey's first World Cup since 2002, when they made an incredible run to the semi-finals. I remember that run, and at the time it felt like a real catalyst for Turkey to become a major player in international soccer and in the international game. that hasn't really happened. They have played a good number of Euros since 2002, and they even made a good impact. They made the semi-finals of Euro 2008. But it is remarkable that this is their first World Cup for 24 years when you consider the population, the passion that they've got for soccer, even the players that they produced in that time. Turkey had a really strong qualification campaign in which they only lost once to Spain. And then the only other game they dropped points in was away to Spain, where they drew. They went into the playoffs somewhat harshly, considering their success in that group, and then they beat Romania 1-0 in the semi-final, and then Kosovo 1-0 in the final. So this is a team that has really proven its value over the last couple of years, and they made the quarterfinals of the last Euros as well, where they were generally quite entertaining to watch. So this team is largely unchanged since that Euros in Germany. But they're 2 years older. This is generally a young group in certain areas of the squad. They've got a couple of wonder kids who I'll mention later on. And so those 2 years have seen them develop even more. I don't think anyone would label this as a golden generation. I think that 2002 team is still going to be lionised. That's the high watermark for the Turkish national team. But this does feel like Turkey's best crop of players for quite a while.
Excellent stuff. Very good. All right, table set for Group D. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dig into the managers, the tactics, the key players, the very specific predictions. Stay with us. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our World Cup Group D preview. Let's take our attention back to the USMNT. Now, Joe, it'd be good to talk about the manager and the tactics for a minute or two. Now, you've got some options here. Would you like to just send this as an email to everybody, or would you like to talk it through? What do you think would be most appropriate?
And send. All right, I see the rest of my time in honor of Mauricio Pochettino not calling the folks that he put on his roster and didn't put on his World Cup roster. I will actually, though, run it through verbally because that's just kind of how I roll as a person, I suppose. Mauricio Pochettino is the coach of this team. Argentine manager, former player for Argentina's national team. He was hired by U.S. Soccer in the fall of 2024 as Greg Berhalter's successor. Had only coached at club levels previously. Had coached some of the biggest clubs in the world. However, PSG, Chelsea, before that Spurs, and then also Southampton and some others, right? I mean, this hire is a coup for U.S. Soccer, an expensive one that required external fundraising, but one that reminded everyone about sort of this new era, I suppose, of U.S. Soccer, where think about this new leadership in charge of U.S. Soccer, Cindy Parlacone, JT Batson, a lot of other folks as the staff has been beefed out. They have gone out and splashed to hire Emma Hayes, maybe the best women's coach on the planet, and Pochettino, one of the best men's coaches on the planet, or at least regarded that way. They had to pay for him, like I said, reported $6 million a year salary. But still, getting someone like Pochettino, I think, was a really, really big move for U.S. Soccer heading in to this World Cup, even if it's just from a narrative belief perspective, right? I mean, I'm team managers don't matter as much as we say they do. I probably wouldn't spend $6 million on Pochettino for a national team if it was just a pure business decision. But if you can go out and fundraise, sure, why not? Love it. Pochettino likes lemons a lot, as we've discussed before, and Wikipedia tells me that Guillaume Balaguer's book tells its readers that Poch learned judo as a child. You know, that's like third-hand, maybe even fourth-hand info by the time it got to you listeners, but if you've read that book, maybe you know whether that's true or not, but Wikipedia says that it is, and I didn't know that before. On the field, tactically, Pochettino's tenure has had a number of growing pains, and some of that has been tied to his personnel choices. There's been a deep exploration of the player pool that has featured some questionable call-ups and tactical choices. Tim Weah playing on the left because of his left eye dominance. Remember that? That was kind of funny. Yunus Musa playing as a right winger, which I guess kind of worked for like 30 minutes, and he scored a goal, and then Yunus Musa's not been around really since then. Jack McGlynn playing as a right winger. You have Anthony Robinson tucking into midfield in possession as part of the double pivot. In 2024, Nathan Harriel getting on the field. John Zawadzki continuing to have his phone ringing. McKennie not getting calls back and forth with Christian Pulisic. There's been a lot going on under Pochettino. And some of it is funny, and I think some of it is wrong. I also think, though, Pochettino has done some important work for this team. Pochettino has helped rebuild the culture that this U.S. team had, and that culture, by accounts, was getting too comfortable under Greg Berhalter. Even through the first couple of windows in charge for Pochettino, he was working on tearing that apart. In March of 2025, after the team flopped in the CONCACAF Nations League for the very first time, lost to Panama in the semifinals, that game really, I think, was the turning point for Pochettino, where he tore it down. And for the Gold Cup, called in a bunch of guys that maybe you wouldn't have expected, and then you get the back and forth with Pulisic and then McKennie, all the things that I said, right? So you get the cultural reset where Pochettino is reminding everybody through his call-ups, hey, your spot is not safe, Weston McKennie. Hey, Christian Pulisic, your spot, like, you're not the sacred cow here. We can have different options in our team. It doesn't have to be you guys. As it turns out, and we'll get to the players later on, it is going to be a lot of those guys. It really is, outside of maybe one or two players, exactly the roster that we thought. But it does seem like Pochettino has reached his desired effect which is having the players buy in more than they were before, having them work a little bit harder than they were before, and realizing that the standards are going to be different than they were before. So I will give Pochettino a lot of credit. It's early, and let's not do a victory lap yet for the guy. But still, it does seem like he recognized a problem and has worked to solve it. Now, tactically for the U.S., they will keep possession and try to break down weaker teams, or at least teams that maybe are like Paraguay and Australia, who are not wildly different talent-wise from the U.S., right? The U.S., I think, has more talent than those teams, but it's not night and day. Against those kinds of teams that want to stick in their own third a lot and be combative, I think the U.S. will be happy to take on the mantle of being the protagonist. Against bigger teams, maybe that they'll meet in the knockout rounds, I think it's going to be a little more transitional, a little bit of a different story. Defensively, it's either a 4-4-2 or a 5-4-1. It's been 90% of 4-4-2 for this team. Does depend a little bit on the opposition's structure. And then in 99% of the games, it's been that 3-2-5 in possession. So that hasn't changed for Pochettino. That's what we should expect to see outside of some wild knockout round wrinkle. But it's been a pretty standard tactical recipe for this team. I really do think that most of Poch's work has been done on the personnel front and the cultural front.
So as a sort of TLDR, if listener hasn't been paying attention to what Poch has done with the US so far, Joe, if you're expecting sort of a high press and maybe some of the stuff you've seen at club level, like maybe some frenetic high pressing and that kind of thing, is it fair to say there's less of that and more of the sort of possession-based stuff, more of the defensive structure stuff that's been going on?
I think so. I mean, the U.S. is still pressed. I don't think the press has been very good. In fact, I think that has been maybe the biggest flaw of Pochettino's team. And it kind of makes sense, right? You have barely any training sessions. So training a press that is also going to be opponent-dependent is probably quite difficult in those sorts of environments. So I don't think we've seen Poch be that married to that. Although I'll admit I don't have a great sense of what Pochettino's tactics were at club level, if I'm being totally honest. I wasn't locked into his Tottenham team, and I wasn't locked into his PSG or Chelsea teams either. So I just have vague impressions of that. But I think we will see some high pressure from this U.S. team. That has been a theme. I don't get the sense that it's been quite as assertive as it was for Pochettino at some of those stops. And maybe part of that is because of the center back problems that this team has that we'll get onto later on. But I think this is really when they have the chance. This is a pretty measured possession team that wants to try to use the ball to create chances. Like, really, if you squint, it doesn't look that different in possession from what Greg Berhalter was trying to do at the end of his time.
Defensively, though, I agree with Joe. I don't know how much whole pitch high pressing we're going to see, but I thought yesterday against Senegal, or
4 days ago, yes,
4 days ago against Senegal, the recent game against Senegal, I did see the United States closing down really, really quickly, and it led to a lot of shots that would have been clear-cut chances ending up being blocked or shot wide. And then there's moments like Weston McKennie sprinting back and putting in a hard challenge and getting a big applause and thumbs up from Pochettino. It felt like the U.S. was being quickly reactive, if not pressing. Then at the very least, it did seem like the understanding of when to step out and how aggressively to do so was better than we've seen of late. But yeah, I agree with Joe overall. I don't think we're going to see full high pressing from start to finish.
I think the more interesting tactical things that Pochettino has done are using Sergiño Dest as an out-and-out winger, which is now where he's played in most of his games for Pochettino. We haven't seen very much of Dest because of his injuries, but he is defending mostly as a winger these days for Pochettino, and I think Poch really rates what he can do for this team going forward and wants to use him higher up the field. So I think that is a change that we didn't see under previous coaches. Getting to see someone like Alex Freeman brought into the team, where he's now playing as that hybrid right back, right-sided center back. Freeman is a guy that Poch brought into this team and has now overseen his national team tenure while he's been moving at club level from Orlando City to Villarreal, where I think his future is very bright, Alex Freeman, and I think we're going to see him play a lot of minutes this summer. It's been a lot about personnel and finding the right roles for them on the team, rather than I think these big macro tactical, wow, how did he ever think of this kind of stuff?
All right. Thank you, Joe. The US will be playing Australia in its second game in Seattle in the group stage. Tony Popovich will be coaching Australia, former Crystal Palace defender. His managerial debut on this stage, he was given the job in September 24. He's a well-known quantity back in Oz, a three-time A-League Coach of the Year. He replaced Graham Arnold in 2024 after the first two World Cup qualifiers in which Australia only got a point, but he obviously turned that one around. He was also part of the aforementioned 2006 Golden Generation of Australia, which had your Tim Cahills, your Mark Vidukas, your Harry Kewells, etc. And they ended that 32-year drought at the World Cup by qualifying for 2006, and as noted, going to the round of 16 as well. So, what fun and games can we expect from Australia, huh? Is it going to be thrilling? No. It's 3-4-2-1 you're probably going to get from Tony Popovich here. Counter-attacking style, lots of organisation, some speed in transition, strong defending, robust backline you'd hope to see here from the Aussies. Very happy to let the opponent have the ball. I feel like I've said this about most of the teams I've spoken about in these previews so far. It's a similar kind of identity for this level of team, I would suggest. But a very disciplined team who are not afraid to run. Quite meat and potatoes. Hey, Graham, you know, like Ange Postecoglou? Mm-hmm. Think about everything about Ange Postecoglou and reverse it, and that's what we're going to get from...
Big Ange down under. That's what you're saying.
That's right. Yeah, it's going to be no
great.
frills. Not a lot of mega stars in this team. No frills. Perhaps substance over style, but of course there is substance here. So we'll be interesting to see what this team can pull off as a unit. But a very small introduction to the coach and the kind of approach they're going to be having. I think they're going to be hard to break down. Is maybe the best thing I can say about the Aussie team at this point. So we shall see. All right, Taylor, Paraguay.
You think Australia is going to be hard to break down?
Yeah, boy.
It's going to be a rivalry born of defensiveness between Australia and Paraguay. That game is one I'm not fully excited to get to watch because we've got
tickets
manager
are $5,000 though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're willing to pay that for nosebleeds, yes.
Yeah,
for
that's right.
7,000 though, you get slightly less nosebleed seats. So
Nosebleed
what
with
more
attention.
could you ask for in a game that will have up to 11 passes in it? Gustavo Alfaro is the manager for Paraguay. He's an Argentine manager in charge since 2024, as I said. Prior to that, 2 years with Costa Rica, 4 with Ecuador, Boca Juniors before that. Starts managing in 1992. He has had 19 gigs, some of them twice. Graham, stop me when you know a club. Atletico de Rafaela?
Nope.
Patronato?
Unfamiliar.
Quilmes?
I think that's a beer.
All right. Then Atletico de Rafaela again. Belgrano?
Yes,
Argentina, baby.
They won the Argentinian title the other day.
There we go.
You got
And then
one, but I'm subscribing from the newsletter now. That was too few you got. I'm sorry.
I know. The subscribers were like the ticker was scrolling down there as I was talking.
He's had an interesting career. Like Rosario Central is in there, Al Ali very briefly, and I believe it is that Al Ali. No, it's not. It's the one in Saudi Arabia. So even there, we get a quick sojourn across, and then he returns because ultimately, I guess national team life is where he wants to be. Here is his philosophy according to Sports Illustrated. Alfaro built his team on the same principles that have defined his career throughout. Defensive organization first, attacking intelligence second, individual brilliance as a bonus rather than a requirement. Paraguay scored just 14 goals in 18 qualifying matches, the lowest total of any automatic qualifier from South America, but they were almost impossible to break down. That is because generally they are in a 4-4-2 defensively. Sometimes it's more of a 4-2-3-1. They are very good in the air. They are very strong in their defensive block. But lately, I do think they've tried to open it up a little bit more with some of the friendlies, including the one against the United States, because I think they are trying to create more goal-scoring opportunities in more different ways, aside from largely set pieces, which is what it has been. But they haven't had much joy. 0 goals against South Korea, 1 goal against the U.S., 1 goal against Mexico, none against Greece, 1 against Morocco. They still are not scoring a ton of goals, so it does feel like a team that ultimately will go back to having that just more out-and-out defensive approach and then looking to counter against a team that is maybe frustrated and a little bit tired. And against Australia, I have no idea how that will play out with maybe neither team trying to cross the halfway line until like sometime in the second half.
Oh, boy. I'm just looking up tickets for Paraguay, Australia in the Bay Area on June 25th. Oh, you can get a $420 ticket, Taylor. $420. Nice.
Bargain.
That's ideal. I mean, I think if I wanted to be kinder, I would say that they could be like some of the Costa Rica teams that have sprung surprises at World Cups past, where they're just going to be really, really difficult to break down and make life really difficult for their opponents, and then hit on the break and then try to hang on. And that can be entertaining in its own way, especially when you're going up against teams that will throw on attacking players and try to make something happen, like Turkey. It might be less fun when it's the U.S. being stymied for large chunks of the time.
All right. Thank you very much. Graham, the US closes out its group stage campaign against Turkey back at SoFi Stadium. What's the manager and tactics situation there?
So Vincenzo Montella is the current Turkey national team manager, obviously someone with real pedigree in the game as a former Italian national team striker. He has been in charge of Turkey since 2003, which came about because he was managing Adana Demirspor in the country at the time. after ending up their very unusual managerial career, Vincenzo Montella. So he's been AC Milan manager, Sevilla manager, Fiorentina. There's a few other clubs in there as well, and then he ended up in Turkey at Adana Demirspor, and then kind of just rolled into the national team job from there. I think his reputation, it seems to be fairly positive considering the impression that Turkey made at the last Euros and also how they qualified for this World Cup, despite the fact they had to go through the playoffs. They were very, very impressive, only didn't win their group because they had the misfortune of landing in the same group as Spain. But the way Turkish football is, the national team manager always seems to come under criticism, even when things are going well, and he has faced criticism at times for some of his tactics. With Turkey, it just never feels like you're too far away from being public enemy number one. So we'll see how this World Cup pans out for Turkey and how Montella's reputation fares as a result. Montella usually gets his team shaped up in a 4-2-3-1 base tactical framework on paper that becomes the 3-2-5 that we see everywhere and Joe talks about all the time and when they're in the attacking phase. It is very fluid, and they have lots of rotations through the midfield and into the attack. They want to get the wide players into 1v1 situations, and they try to create those situations by inverting the fullbacks to take opponents away from the wingers to get them into space. When I watched their game against Kosovo, the playoff final against Kosovo, in particular, that seemed to be a key part of their game plan. And then when they get those wide players forward and into those areas, Turkey want players in the box, either waiting for the cutback or for something off the goalkeeper. If the winger ends up having a shot, they tend to have 2 or maybe even 3 players inside the area for those sequences. And then against the ball, it looks to me like a 4-4-2 or a 4-4-1-1, if we want to be nuanced about it. But basically, they want to stay as compact as possible. They want to close up the spaces between the lines. They are not a high-pressing team by any measure, but they do have their pressing triggers. They will collapse in on teams when they need to. That's something they did a lot in qualifying. In general, their rest defence is really strong. They get behind the ball well. They do a lot of the things that I expect when you guys are talking about Australia and Paraguay in particular. They do a lot of those same things. You know, they close up the gaps. They're quick to make blocks, put their bodies on the line. So that was another area that I was very impressed with. But I think one of the biggest changes that's happened under Montella has been the way that they can now control matches with the ball. They get nice and close to each other, and when they're on their game, their passing sequences are really nice and slick. That's maybe somewhere that there's a difference between the Australias and the Paraguays in this group. Sometimes it can be a little bit slow in possession. I think sometimes fans want them to be a bit more dynamic, considering the natural talent, that they have in the attacking third. But it does give them a foothold in games. It does give them a bit of a natural advantage against lower caliber opponents or even opponents on a similar level. And I think it's going to be really valuable in a World Cup when they will need oxygen in games against high caliber opponents and also in heat potentially. I don't think they're playing in any stadium with a roof at this tournament. Oh, SoFi's kind of got a canopy thing, right? But it'll still be hot at this tournament. The other thing I have to mention is that Turkey are a really good set piece team. They scored 6 goals from set pieces in qualifying, which was the second most in European qualification. They have excellent technicians who can whip deliveries into the box, more on them later. And they have big boys to bring up from the back to get their heads on things. So that is certainly something to keep an eye on at this tournament.
Okay, so general question for the group here. Given how we've heard about Paraguay and Turkey and Australia, it seems to me that the US is not going to be necessarily bunkered down at any stage in the group. There's going to be some opportunity to push forward a little bit here, but also tricky maybe to find the net given how these 3 opponents are going to set up.
I think that's right on the money. And I think if you want to parse out Mauricio Pochettino's squad construction a little bit, he's talked since then with so few central midfielders in Poch's squad. Like, hey, we can use Malik deeper. We can use Malik Tillman deeper. We can use Weston McKennie deeper in midfield. And we saw Malik Tillman play as part of the double pivot to end that game against Senegal on Sunday. Like, that is something he's thinking about. I'd be very surprised if Pochettino didn't rev the engine a little bit more with his personnel in the group stage at least, because of the tasks that are ahead of this U.S. team. What I will say is, if you're looking for some optimism for the U.S., weirdly, the U.S. has played all 3 of these teams in the last calendar year. They played Turkey right before the last Gold Cup. They lost that game, but it was with a Gold Cup squad, right? Not the real U.S. squad. And they played decently well in that game, the U.S., and they've beaten Australia and Paraguay since then. So it's not as if, again, the U.S. is well clear of these teams. I don't think that's true. I think Turkey is the team that probably would scare me the most if I was another team looking in at this group because of some of the match winners that Graham's going to come on to talk about. But the U.S. has at least the reps against a lot of the players and a lot of the systems that they're going to experience in this group stage. They've done it, and that probably does build some confidence.
There you go. Fail to prepare and prepare to fail, etc. and so on. US program doing it right. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the key players from each team and our very specific predictions. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our Group D World Cup preview. It's time to talk about the key players, maybe some omissions as well, and to get a very specific prediction for each of those teams. Why don't we start off, Joe Lowry, with the US of A?
Oh, yeah, baby. I mean, I think a lot of folks listening to this will know the key players. Christian Pulisic, whose national team scoring drought is over. Finally, everyone can stop asking him questions about when the goal drought's going to be over. It's over. Folarin Balogun, Ricardo Pepi, both options up top for this U.S. team. Only see one of them likely at a time. Balogun, I think, is still going to be that guy, but Pepi's performance against Senegal was quite encouraging as well. Weston McKennie, big name for this U.S. team, likely to be in the half spaces, a little higher up, but we could see him drop deeper in midfield, like I mentioned in the last segment. Tyler Adams, of course, going around and winning the ball a whole bunch. Serginho Dest, it looks like, maybe is going to be the starter on the right side over Tim Weah. I really like that move from Pochettino if that is, in fact, what he opts to do. And then Anthony Robinson on the left. I think you get the concerns really starting when you hit the defense and the goalkeeper. And Chris Richards' injury right now is a huge question for the U.S. Pochettino said ahead of the game against Senegal over the weekend that Richards was not going to travel to Charlotte for that game from Atlanta. Instead, he was going to stay behind and continue to rehab. Richards has an ankle injury that he suffered while with Crystal Palace. He did not feature in Crystal Palace's final game of the season. He was the last one to arrive in camp with the national team. And we don't really have a ton of clarity as we're recording of what his status is going to be. That's a concern because Chris Richards is sort of like the only competent center back that the U.S. has right now. It'll be Richards if he's healthy, huge question mark, and Tim Ream likely as the two center backs in the U.S.'s back four. Aye, man, you take Richards off the field and you have Mark McKenzie on there, or you have a Miles Robinson who was really poor in that game against Senegal. Austin Trusty, but Trusty's more of a left-sided center back for this U.S. team. It just gets dicey the further back you work. And then in goal, there's still a question of who's the starter going to be. I will say, I thought Matt Turner was very good in his 45 minutes against Senegal. That made me feel a bit better about what he could look like moving forward. And Matt Freese has been generally fine for the U.S. So I don't think I'm panicked about that in the way I'm panicked about the center backs. But the U.S. does not have a game changer in goal. At least it doesn't seem that way based off of what we've seen so far from this team. They don't have that player that they've had at some past World Cups, some good runs at some of those past World Cups that have been driven by their shot stopper. So that is a question. If I had to list my problem areas, it would be center back 1, goalkeeper probably 2, and then just the general attacking quality and exactly where the goals are going to come from, even though we saw a pretty good performance against Senegal in that regard over the weekend. And that does tie into my VSP for this team. Weston McKennie, Christian Pulisic, Folarin Balogun, and set pieces will score either all of the U.S.'s goals at this World Cup or all but one of them at this World Cup. So here's what I mean by that. Set pieces, that could be a Sebastian Berhalter, who's in this roster and Pochettino seems to love, by the way. It could be Sebastian Berhalter serving a ball in and Tim Ream heading it home. That would count as set pieces. Or it could be Malik Tillman taking a corner kick from the opposite side and him heading the ball or serving the ball up to Anthony Robinson who volleys it home, right? That would count as a set piece. Set pieces have been mentioned a lot in our preview so far, and they tend to come up around teams that don't have truly elite attacking talent, and the U.S. doesn't have that, although it is looking better than it did at the last World Cup. In that March window that we saw Sebastian Berhalter and Malik Tillman shove Christian Pulisic off of set pieces, metaphorically, that didn't really happen, but that's how I like to imagine it. I think it's a huge moment for the U.S. because Christian Pulisic is not a very good set-piece taker. He's been taking them, had been taking them over and over and over again. He's now off of that responsibility. That is a legitimate boost for this U.S. team. Like, I don't think we've seen one decision boost this team before under Pochettino. So I think set pieces could really carry a load for the U.S. this summer. Pulisic is just the team's best player, no doubt about it. I think Balogun's going to be the starting 9. He's a very good player as well. McKennie can do some damage as a late arriving runner. We saw him get some chances against Senegal and then set pieces. So that is my prediction. All of the goals, or all but one of them for the U.S. at this summer's World Cup, are going to come from that group.
So to be clear, your VSP is that either the forwards will score or the other players when they're allowed near the goal.
Oh, sorry, is this the 0 points guy chiming in here?
Thanks, Graham. Thanks for saying that, man. That means a lot.
Just to clarify, that means the game that happened 4 days ago, and definitely not yesterday, Joe would already be right on the brink of not getting his VSP because of the Serginho Dest goal, right?
Correct. I like to live on the edge, Graham. I like to live on the edge.
That would mean if the US has 4 or 5 games, one more goal from outside of those players secures it. I think that's entirely fair.
Yep.
Okay,
I think so
Counselor.
too.
I'll allow it, but watch yourself.
I mean, I would love to be wrong, right? I mean, if the U.S. can get some auxiliary scoring, especially from Serginho Dest, like that is a huge question that I have coming into this tournament. if Dest can be as effective in the attack as he was in those 45 minutes against Senegal, and at times like he was last fall, man, that's something. Like that really is something. The weird thing about this U.S. team is we just haven't seen all the good players on the field together under Pochettino. Part of that's because the player pool is made of glass, always has been, always will be. Tyler Adams is always hurt. Serginho Dest is always hurt. Gio Reyna is literally made of straw. Like, I mean, we just haven't seen it. And so it does leave some element of mystery coming into this summer. But if Dest can give you a little bit more on the attack and he gets those minutes over Weah, who doesn't bring any goal threat in the attack, that's a real moment. And if Pepe is as good as he was in his minutes against Senegal at this summer's World Cup, man, that opens up some doors too. So there are reasons to be optimistic about what the attack can bring, but I am ever cold-hearted. So that is my VSP.
Very nice, Joe. Being made of straw, literally made of straw, makes me think of the Wizard of Oz. I've got some Wizards of Oz to talk about myself, some key players on the Australian national team. Very pleased with that one.
That was
first,
quite
I'd
good.
like to...
unfortunately, it was.
I'd like to shout out Matt Ryan, who is still only 34. Not the former Falcons QB. This is Matt Ryan, the Australian goalkeeper. He's at Levante now. I'm sure he was Australia's goalkeeper in 1976, so I'm very pleased that Matt Ryan is still in this setup. But a couple of newer, swashbuckling younger players outfield to look out for. Cassini Yengi got 6 goals in qualifying. He's their top scorer. He's a 27-year-old striker who plays in the J-League. That's going to be a name Yengi you might want to look out for in this group. Also, one of their young stars, Nestroy Irankunda, who's at Watford at the moment. He's another forward. He's 20 years old. Very interesting story behind him. A Burundian refugee from Tanzania. He moved to Australia as a baby. He played in Bayern's academy as well. Set piece guy, just like those US players who won't be the forwards who are getting the goals. Good at set
Literally
pieces.
2 forwards are on that list. Continue.
He's a set piece wizard, is Irankunda. 5 goals from 13 national team appearances as well. In this team, I think maybe I was a bit unfair, sort of the meat and potatoes characterization I gave Australia, because there are a couple of flair players who might do something in this team. I think Irankunda is very much one of them, kind of a wild card, mercurial talent in a very rigid team, shall we say. A couple of other players I'd like to highlight on Australia. Cameron Burgess in centre-back. He's at Swansea at the moment. He's 30 years old, but this will be his first World Cup outing. He's been ever-present in the Champo, exactly the kind of centre-back profile that I think Popovic wants in his defensive setup. Ultra reliable, easy for me to say, in the back. Another player I want to highlight is Jacob Italiano, just because I think he's got a great name. One of my favourite player names, Jake Italiano. Pleased to meet you. Played in the Austrian Bundesliga. He's one of the right-back options for this team. I'm sad to report some omissions and absences, though. Firstly, my sweet prince, Riley McGree, has been ruled out of this team, injuring his hammy in the Champo playoff final with Middlesbrough. So very, very sad that Riley won't be there. And perhaps saddest of all, for soccer, the cum dog.
I know.
Jason Cummings will not be at this tournament, mainly because he hasn't played since 2023 and he's now without a club. But hey, his legend lives on, is what I would say. So, cum dog fans out there, Graham.
Just very quickly on it, I'm gutted that the cum dog is not heading to another World Cup to converse with Lionel Messi and tell him after Argentina. One of my favourite World Cup stories of all time. Argentina knock out Australia. Jason Cummings, I think, gets on for the last 5 minutes and at the end tells Messi, "Go and do it for me, son." So, just great banter.
That's good.
Great banter from Jason Cummings. So maybe they should have brought him along as a vibes guy. But on a serious note, a big omission. I was just reading a few days ago, definitely not today. Martin Boyle not included in the Australia squad, who is born in Scotland, kind of came through our like Scotland's youth teams, but has been like a really important player for them these last few years. He got injured before the last World Cup. I think he's got 10 goals and 40 caps, which for a winger for Australia, no disrespect intended, is impressive. And he has been left out of the squad for Christian Volpato, who is a young Italian, or he's Australian born, but until now he's been considered Italian in a soccer sense, and he plays for Sassuolo. And so I think Cremonese?
Parma?
But I think he is basically like the Julian Green to Landon Donovan being left out of this squad. So that's been like a big storyline when this squad has been announced and totally unexpected.
Struth.
Can I add another player to the party? One that did make the cut that I think listeners should absolutely be watching. Yes. Lucas Harrington, 18-year-old center back for the Colorado Rapids. He's going to be one of the youngest players at this tournament. If I had to bet real money on it, he'll be one of the 5 or so youngest starters at this tournament, because I do believe he will be a starter for Australia. This is a player that arrived in Colorado after playing multiple seasons of regular minutes in the Australian top flight, has now become an every game starter for a team playing a game model that I think most closely mirrors what top European teams require of their center backs, which is defending in a very high line, so covering a lot of ground, and building from the back rigorously, and expecting a lot from the youngster in possession. Harrington is, along with Manu Dua, like one of the best center backs I've ever seen in MLS, and I watch probably too much MLS for anybody's good. Big clubs are sniffing around Lucas Harrington, like that's already been reported out there. He is really good and could move for big money coming up after the summer. He's somebody to watch. I think he could be a breakout star this summer.
High praise. Thank you very much indeed, Joe. That leaves for Australia my very specific prediction. Australia will have under 40% possession in all of their group stage games. They have very little interest in the ball. I'm not sure they're going to be a flair, fun-to-watch team necessarily. They might steal a point or two in this group, but I think they're generally going to be happy to let their opponents have the ball, which it sounds like there's at least 2 other opponents in this group who will be doing the same thing.
That could be dicey. I'm in.
Yeah, risky.
I feel like I feel like this might be one where I'm like 35%.
Oh,
I might have to haggle you down here.
Meet me at 37.5. You got a deal.
37.5.
Amazing. Taylor, great work, man.
Thanks, buddy. I mean,
That malleable.
That does feel like a thing that occurs regularly with some of the teams we're talking about. So I can't wait for Australia and Paraguay to shatter this one for you, depending on who ends up with the ball more often. Somehow neither, probably. I like it, Ryan. 37.5%. I also apologize for being the only one to not bring a one more player to talk about with Australia note. I didn't realize that was going to be the team that we would all have additional thoughts on. So I do apologize for that.
It's because half of them are really ours. That's why I've got thoughts on them. Tete Yengi also played in the Scottish Premiership, and interested to see him in this squad. But maybe he's got better since then.
I'm assuming interesting in a good way. Which is my segue to Paraguay? Yeah, let's do it. A couple key players for you. The one that I think when we did our combined best 11 for this group, I think we all had this player as one of our center backs, or most of us did. Omar Alderete anchors the back line, which is likely to be a back four. The Sunderland center back, who's had obviously a very good season with them, is a critical part of what Paraguay wants to do defensively. So too is Gustavo Gomez, 33 years old, of Palmeiras. He's the captain. He would be the other center back. He tends to be the kind of stay-at-home organizer, leader, communicator, and then Alderete will be the one to track the big number 9 or try to kind of contest things in the air when they can. Junior Alonso of Atletico Mineiro will be your left back, and then Juan Caceres of Dinamo Moscow is likely to be your right back. Attacking players, there are a couple, but Cremonese features, so I'm going to talk like this. Antonio Sanabria is, I think, most likely to be the starting number 9. Sometimes you will get Miguel Almiron partnering him of Atlanta United fame, Newcastle before that, Atlanta United before that. Sometimes Almiron is part of a front two. Sometimes he is out wide on the left, and that's been what it's been more so recently, is Almiron on the left and then Diego Gomez on the right, with Julio Enciso kind of popping up in different areas. And those are 2 names that I want to focus on. Obviously, Almiron is very important to this team. He is one of their more veteran players, and this is a veteran team. I think 12 players over the age of 30, only 3 are 23 or under. 2 of those would be Diego Gomez and Julio Enciso. Gomez can play centrally for them, but I think usually is more of a right midfielder or right winger, and is pretty important to them in when they do transition to attack. He, I think, is one of the few players that does have that creative ability and technical control that maybe is tertiary to what Gustavo Alfaro wants from his players, but that can be an area where Diego Gomez shines. And that's the same for Julio Enciso, who's a player that I had a lot of enthusiasm for when he first breaks through with Brighton, has some injuries, has now kind of had his career derailed a little bit, but seems to be back on track after being sold to Strasbourg in France. But he's a player who, every time I watched him in the Premier League, would just look exciting. He looked like he was up to something. He looked like he was trying shots from distance or taking people on, and he can be a creative source of chaos, essentially, when Paraguay do need to shake things up, when they do have to go and chase the game. I think those 2 are the players that can be somewhat electrifying and really engaging and really interesting, and then still have the athleticism and speed to be able to cause problems for a team if they are maybe overstretched or trying to get a goal. These are the two players that I think are more likely to punish you than, say, Almiron, who is still very, very good, but just not quite where he was a few years ago. But none of them relate to my specific prediction, because I'm going back to Omar Alderete for that one. He is going to average at least 5 headers a game and will score at least 1 goal in the group stage. This is a team that will bunker once their press is bypassed. They will press very infrequently, very intermittently, usually after the ball is turned over. If they don't win it back, then they're going to kind of collapse back and play defensive. Alderete, Gomez, Balbuena are all very good in the air, all pretty tall. But as I said, Gomez is the organizer. Alderete will go hunting. So I think he is going to be the one kind of contesting balls in the box, contesting crosses. Obviously, they're going to be defending set pieces pretty rigorously. But he is also a focus on set pieces, which is an area that they have identified as being an opportunity where they can get points, where they can get wins. That's something they did in qualifying. Alderete was key in this. He scores in one of their most historic victories. I believe he scores in the game against Argentina. And then also, I think, is heavily involved in their win, like in qualifying over some bigger teams. So I think Alderete is a player that can score goals, but is going to be doing a lot of defensive work, a lot of fighting in the air, a lot of battling for crosses, and I think he wins at least 5 headers per game and scores at least 1 goal. He will average 5 headers per game, I should say.
Marvellous. Thank you very much. Very specific. We appreciate that. Taylor, last but not least, we go to Graham to round us out on Turkey.
Yeah, so Turkey, as I mentioned earlier, they've got a pretty strong squad with a whole bunch of players that listeners will already be familiar with. I mentioned the control that Turkey have in possession a lot of the time, and Hakan Çalhanoğlu is the player more than anyone else who allows them to have that. He is someone that listeners will know, 32-year-old central midfielder for Inter Milan, who has developed over the last few seasons into one of the best pace-setting, deep-lying playmakers anywhere in the world. And for a long time, he was used in a much more advanced position for club and country, but Montella, much like Simone Inzaghi at club level, moved him deeper, and he's arguably more influential there. I think the last few seasons of Çalhanoğlu have been peak Çalhanoğlu rather than when he was in that kind of number 10 position, where he was very good as well, but I think he has more influence in a deeper role. Part of the reason, for Turkey anyway, that kind of advanced creative burden has been lifted off Çalhanoğlu is because of the emergence of a certain Arda Güler. Another player listeners will know, he is the 21-year-old attacking midfielder who is now a first-team figure for Real Madrid. A genuine wonder kid. That term gets thrown around a lot. He was called the Turkish Messi when he was a teenager at Fenerbahce. I think he is obviously not quite up to that level, but considering where he is at 21 years old, I think he has justified the hype already. He had a real breakout tournament at the last Euros, where he was still very much on the periphery of the Real Madrid team, and that was the first time I personally had seen him in a sustained number of matches at that tournament, and I think he has taken another step forward since then. I used to think he was a winger who would beat his man and take a shot at goal, and he certainly has that quality, but he's also so nimble in possession and can create in tight spaces. He can get on the half turn, and Montella gives Güler a pretty free role, and that's where I think he has developed a lot since that last Euros, because he just drifts all over the place. You will see him deep, sometimes even so deep that he's picking the ball up off the centre backs. You'll see him driving out to the wide areas. You'll see him on the edge of the box. He makes late runs into the area as well. He is an all-round creative threat who I think could light up this World Cup. That's how good I think he is. The other wonder kid that I kind of referenced earlier in the episode is Kenan Yildiz. He's another attacking difference maker who deserves a mention. 21-year-old winger for Juventus, maybe not quite at the same level, in my opinion anyway, as Arda Güler. But he's still one of the best young attackers anywhere in the world. And the way that, on paper anyway, Turkey tend to line up, it tends to be Yildiz as the left-sided attacker with Güler on the right. Yildiz maybe doesn't often have the same level of freedom as Güler, but he still wants to cut inside and link up and pose a goal threat off his right foot. So he's another player to keep an eye on. And one of the reasons that Yildiz can cut inside and he has that degree of freedom is that Ferdi Kadioglu likes to get forward from his left-back position. He is fresh from possibly the best season of his career for Brighton. I don't know if Montella uses him in such a dynamic way as he does at club level. I don't know if he quite gets forward in the same way, certainly not from the game tape that I've looked at. But he is mobile, he's technically able, a high potential player there as well. Next key player, I know I'm jumping around a little bit here, but Kerim Aktoglu. He will be Turkey's centre forward. He was their joint top scorer in qualifying. He's an interesting player because he's not a centre forward. He's a winger at club level, and he will run the channels. He's very mobile. As I say, he's a winger at club level for Fenerbahce. So I think not having a true focal point is the thing that would elevate this Turkey team even more if they had that. But Aktoglu he's hardly a bad player, and it was actually his goal that sealed qualification in the playoff final against Kosovo. So he will have opportunities. And very quickly, 2 more players I'll highlight. The first one is Zeki Çelik. He is an experienced right back for Roma and Lille before that for a number of years. Doesn't tend to have the same attacking licence that Kadioglu has on the other side. He's usually the fullback who tucks in to create the back 3 in possession, but he's reliable and steady and a very important member of this team. And then the last player that I'll highlight, there are a lot of key players in this team. It's a strong squad.
You've done 26 of them so far.
Yeah, is Demirel, who is the dominant centre-back. He has been in Saudi Arabia with Al Ahly for the last couple of seasons, but he's someone who's used to high level. He's been at Juventus, Atalanta. He's had an injury this year, so he missed the playoff games, but he's the best pure defender that Turkey has. That brings me to my VSP, which is that Hakan Çalhanoğlu will average more shots per game than any Turkish player at this World Cup. Ooh. That didn't happen. In qualifying, it was Güler and potentially Yildiz and maybe Aktoglu as well. But my reasoning here is these are stronger defences, particularly in this group. It feels like Turkey are going to come up against. And so I think Çalhanoğlu has got a bit of a cannon on him, and he will let rip with a bit of freedom from that position. So yeah, I think Fotmob have like the average for a tournament. I think he'll be top for the shots per 90 minutes.
I like it. So most goals outside the box for Turkey in this group then, by logically speaking?
I mean, yeah, he can crack them, right? Çalhanoğlu, we've seen that numerous times in the past, so he's a good bet for a banger, I think, in this World Cup.
Especially against 2 compact defences. That feels
that's
like
the
a
logic,
thing that will happen early and often.
Maybe born of frustration, or maybe a free kick on the halfway line. Do it again, backhand. We like to see that kind of thing. Very good. All right, that is Group D at the World Cup, which belongs to the West Coast, of course, with games in California, in the Bay Area, in Los Angeles, and in Vancouver, and in Seattle as well. Very good. Thank you very much, Taylor Rockwell, for previewing this group. We appreciate you.
Are we all feeling, you're welcome, my friend, are we all feeling like it's Turkey, USA in some order?
I think so, yeah.
Sure hoping so, pal. I've got Turkey, US, Paraguay, Australia in that order.
Yeah, I have to say, doing my research, Turkey impressed me quite a bit. They had a very good qualification campaign, so as much as I'd like to see the US finishing top, I don't know, maybe as a neutral, I might go with Turkey as the edge. But who knows? Home nation. Maybe it's the USA.
I guess the only interesting thing will be it's Turkey, USA on the final match day, right, of this group. So potentially both of them are already in comfortable position. Theoretically, the U.S. tends to make things complicated for themselves. So I won't be surprised if Turkey are on like 6 points and the U.S. is on 4 points heading into that one.
There we go. Thank you very much indeed, Taylor. Thank you very much, Graham Ruthven, and all your information about Turkey and its poultry-based desserts.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
They picked the wrong poultry, by the way. Just
yeah, I know. Imagine putting poultry in a dessert and not being the obvious one.
Oh, unbelievable. Unbelievable stuff. Joe, thank you very much indeed.
Keep turkey out of my desserts. Keep lunch meat turkey off my sandwiches, too, while we're at it.
Okay, noted. Noted. I was going to make your sack lunch every day while we're together in
I take
Los
it back
Angeles.
then. I'll take whatever you put on that sando, Ryan.
Excellent stuff. Thank you, listener, for joining us on this preview. Stick around on the feed and you'll get the Group E preview. That one, of course, consisting of Germany, Curacao, Ivory Coast and Ecuador. That's dropping on the feed on Thursday. But for now, bye!